Welcome to Beyond Six Figures, the podcast that helps business coaches to micro-niche, get noticed, and become fully booked. Learn from top industry leaders who've successfully taken their businesses and their lives beyond six figures. Get ready to level up your coaching business and make this world a better place, one business at a time. And now, here's your host, Ziv Raviv.
Hello and welcome to Beyond Six Figures. Today with me, I'm joined with Laura Thompson, a leader on communications who worked with entrepreneurs, executives, and teams across more than 20 industries. What really stands out in Laura's work is her ability to help leaders lead with their values and not just with their strategies. Her upcoming book, A Culture of Values, is going to be a practical guide for building businesses that reflects what truly matters. It's not just about performing. It's about having a mission statement. It's about putting values into action day after day. Laura's approach in business and in communication is refreshing and honest. She believes that leadership is not just about being the loudest in the room. It's also about clarity and integrity and meaningful connections. I'm so excited to have you here with us, Laura, and share some of your frameworks and ideas. Thank you for joining the show.
Yeah, thank you, Ziv. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
Tell me a little bit about the work you've been putting into your upcoming book. This is fascinating to learn more about how this baby comes to life in a way.
Yeah, so first of all, I've been an executive coach for about the past 10 years, but I started off my career in finance and forming my own company as a seed capital investor. So hopefully can relate to the business owners out there. And then went into marketing communications until I decided that the calling was to become an executive coach. I work with the Fortune 500, international organizations, NGOs, nonprofits, small business owners, startup companies. And what I have found over the past 10 years are these universal themes that keep popping up, and which I'll get into later, which would be the effective communicating, decision-making, influence without authority, leadership presence, which are the soft skills. And those actually are the hard skills because everyone does have the technical expertise. And what I found missing were values. And it was missing in business, in government, in international organizations. And I just felt the need to write a book about it. And when we have a foundation of values, that can serve as our North Star during times of chaos, uncertainty, ambiguity, which seems to be like our present world at the moment.
So I want to know more about that feeling that started to build up in you of identifying the lack of values. What are some things that our listeners might notice in themselves or in their clients that are signs that potentially we have a values issue? We have some lack of clarity around our values, which leads to something. What is that thing?
Yeah, so a lot of times at the Fortune 500, you have a lot of reorgs, which means a lot of layoffs. So people felt dispensable, right? They did not feel valued. Clients of companies, they're not treated with respect. And they just feel like it goes back to respect and treating people with dignity. And that's what kept missing. It doesn't matter what type of company you're working in. And if you don't treat your employees with respect and dignity and just treat them, as a widget, they're going to start feeling not worthy, not valuable, And then they lose motivation. They don't want to work at this place anymore. And if you're a customer, you may not want to work with the company anymore if they're being treated badly, because maybe they're not listening, going back to listening skills, to the needs of the customer. And it kept becoming a theme. And then my feeling within was we need to balance people, purpose, and profitability. It can't just be focused on profitability at the expense of people. Does that make sense?
It does. And what I hear you say is that there are actual signs, like a client of yours, an executive might say that we have people like feeling less motivated because of like a wave of firing that went through the company and now they're not motivated, or the clients are complaining more than ever. And these are like first few signals that you can sense that there's a value problem, and they were focusing so much on profitability, but they forgot people and persons and purpose. So I want to ask you, like, let's say you do notice that you're talking with an executive coach client of yours, and you start to notice that the values are not well defined. How do you actually present that to him? Because it can be quite intimidating or even insulting if you tell someone you have a value issue, you don't have enough of them, right? It sounds like you're almost telling them you're not a moral person, you don't have morals, you don't have values. It's like a fundamental thing that we don't admit easily. Oh yeah, we do have a value issue. How do you actually present that to them?
Well, I'll never say that they have a value issue. And everyone does have values, and they may be aware of them or not aware. So what I do is bring awareness to values. And I'll give you an example. I worked with an advertising producer, and his team was lacking motivation. He was afraid they were all going to quit. And this was actually, he was an in-house advertising producer at a Fortune 100 company. And I went through the values exercise with him. And it's very simple. I just said, what do you think your top 5 values are? And if people don't know, I'll say, well, it could be excellence in working. It could be being of service to others. It could be client-centric, merchant-centric. It could be money even. I've had clients who say, I'm just driven by money. They're usually in finance. And then he loved this exercise so much. And what he came up with, which was very important to him, he valued sustainability. And being in advertising, there's a lot of waste. And he said, oh my God, with every ad campaign, we have too much food at the end of the day. We throw it away. We have props. We have clothing. We just throw it away. So then he decided to work the values exercise with his team. And then he also realized that they valued sustainability. So they created a team mission sustainability statement. And going forward, they focused on leading future productions with green initiatives in mind and donating all the extra food to homeless shelters, whatever city they were in, extra clothing to charities that may, distribute clothing to those in need, and the same with props. And then he did say, well, what do you do with the A-list actors? They'll fly in with their jets. There's the carbon footprint. So from that perspective, they couldn't really control that, but they could influence others. Instead of maybe taking a private jet, maybe take a commercial airliner. If they were in New York City, they got some actors to take the subway versus taking private chauffeured car. So that was reducing the carbon footprint. So from that perspective, the team going forward felt like they weren't just getting a paycheck anymore. They were having a purpose beyond a paycheck, and that really meant a lot to them. And that was based on their value of sustainability. So that's how I would work the process.
So in other words, people don't have a value issue as in they're lacking. They have a value awareness issue where they're not necessarily acting upon their values. And what you help them is raise their awareness and maybe even build a plan to actually take action in light of the values. Tell us a little bit, give us a sneak peek into your book. Your book is going to be launched in Amazon. You can already pre-order it. What do you mean by a culture of values, and what is, from your standpoint, is the transformation that happens when someone will read through your book?
Well, again, the culture of values is becoming aware of your values, whether it's as an individual. You can even do a values exercise with your family. You can do it with your team at your company, your organization. And it's the foundation that creates your stability, again, your North Star, in keeping you aligned with what truly matters to you. And then incorporating it into organizations, no matter what type of company you have, it's a great motivator and it's inspirational for the employees. And in my book, I give lots of stories from companies and leaders who have used the premise of values. And I'll give another example. It was a very large international organization, and they were doing a 5-year, $100 million raising money campaign for the nonprofit. And the first 2 years are going after the big corporations who can donate a lot of money. And then the third and fourth years, they sort of get stuck and they get unmotivated because they're going after the little person who wants to give money. And I was asked to help the team leader, how can we get this team through the last stretch before we make the $100 million mark? Because they were starting to wanting to quit because they were getting frustrated. They were maybe at 90 million and they needed that 10 more million. And again, I used the values exercise, and they created a Living Our Values motto, and it linked back to what they truly valued, and that was environmental responsibility. And once they tapped back in to why they even joined the international organization, because they had forgotten about it because they were just so concerned about raising $100 million, it remotivated the team why they were there, what the whole meaning and purpose of raising 100 million was for. And in the end, they were successful. She kept the team intact. And then they decided to use that model for around the world, and because it was so successful. So I just bring in a lot of stories to relate. And it can be, again, across sectors, across types of businesses. And then there are always universal themes involved. And communications is huge. There are just so many themes involved in the book.
So this leads us to the second topic that I wanted to pick your brain today, Laura. And that is what we started with, communication skills. These soft skills that are actually hard to master. What are some of the soft skills that you see that are so important for your clients, and how can they actually improve upon them?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is communicating with clarity. And that's hard for a lot of people. Some people love to ramble and they get to the point maybe 5 minutes later. And then they learn that they just try to distill complex ideas simply, clearly, to the point, with a clear objective in mind. And then part of what I like to call mindful communication is understanding and listening to diversity of thought, understanding all the different cultures that are at the table, because everything's global today for the most part, and uncovering just all these different perspectives and points of view, which creates better decision making because you're having a bigger perspective, bringing in all these different points of view. And listening is very important. A lot of times people just talk, but they don't listen. And effective communication is a balance of listening and talking, respecting the person's point of view, maybe not necessarily agreeing with it, but having a little bit of empathy, understanding it, and then trying to either come to a resolution or a compromise. It's not like your way or my way, right? And respecting each person that you're communicating with. And again, I'll bring back treating each person with dignity. And, we're all human beings. And if we could respect one another, it would be really powerful. And, again, going back to listening.
So I want to ask you about listening as a skill and how it's different for different generations. Tell me if that's something you experienced or did you work differently? Because I think that the importance of being listened to is different for different generations, and the ability to listen is different. How do you take into account the generational differences when it comes to these soft skills?
I think generationally, I have dealt with, all generations, starting maybe like after college up to maybe 79. That's quite a diverse audience. And I find the younger generations, they are capable of listening. I find more so that if it's a virtual meeting, they have more trouble looking at you like in the eyes. They'll want to look up at the ceiling, out the window, and they have a hard time like focusing on you, like looking, at your eyes, like you're feeling like they're listening to you, but they are listening, even though their focus is, all over the place. And I have coached a lot of them. You don't have to necessarily look in the person's eyes, but you could look at their nose, for example, and it still makes you feel like you're looking into their eyes. And that's helpful. With the younger generation, I found one person was terrified of speaking to people because he was texting all the time. He was more comfortable texting. That was his means of communication. And then I worked with him to help him because in the business world, you do have to talk to people in person and virtually and be looking at them like you are listening to them, paying attention to them. So it is quite a skill for the younger generation. I find too, it depends if you're into tech, engineering backgrounds, because they tend to be a little introverted. But again, they can listen very well, but they may just be very shy in speaking or getting their voice heard. So I think it goes back to the person. Yeah, there might be some generational differences, but it goes back to the person and their individuality, their personality. And some young people are very wise and are great listeners.
And so how can people learn more about these soft skills, like listening, and just kind of work on them?
Well, they can learn from my upcoming book, A Culture of Values. But I also love Dan Goleman's Emotional Intelligence. you can learn a lot because soft skills is basically covered in his book of emotional intelligence. And that would be listening as a strategy, communicating with empathy, understanding the other person's point of view. I'm sure ChatGPT AI, you could just type in some keywords and it will give you definitions and ways to learn. There are a variety of ways to learn about the soft skills.
And how can people learn more about you, Laura, and follow what you do?
Well, they can go to my website, which is laurathompson.world, and that's LauraThompson.world. They can go LinkedIn. These would be under the show notes.
Exactly. I was just about to say, we're going to put the links to everything in the show notes and also a link to the Amazon book so that by the time you're listening to this, you could sign up for the launch of the book and be a part of it. So thank you so much, Laura, for sharing with us a quick sneak peek into the importance of values and communication skills. And thank you, everyone, for listening for another episode of Beyond Six Figures.
Thanks for listening to Beyond Six Figures. Check out the extended show notes that include bonus material, practical tips, and exclusive resources on our website, zivraviv.com. Until next time, keep dreaming big and pushing your business and your life beyond six figures.